Hi, it's Dr. Mary, and on this week's segment of Ask Dr. Mary, we are talking about the chakras. So I had a question come in from Roxy, and she wanted to know whether or not her chakras or blocks in her chakras could be affecting her ability to activate her inner goddess. And my answer was yes, absolutely. And so I'm going to try to dive in and at least give you a general overview of the chakra system, and then we'll try to dive into a different chakra each week for the next 7 weeks or so till I really can firmly answer Roxy's question, because it's not, it is a simple yes and no, but it's more than a yes, a simple yes and no. So to start out with, what are your chakras? So based in ancient Vedic astrology, your chakra system is your energy system that permeates your body. And according to this astrology, there were 7 main centers. Some people say 8, some people say 10, but scholars tend to agree, at least from the Upanishads and basic Vedic astrology, that it was started out with 7. And so we start with your root chakra, which is at the base of your spine at your tailbone, and that is the one I want to talk about more today. Then we move up to your second chakra, which is about 3 inches below your navel. Then we move into your solar plexus, which is the power center. That's a little bit above your navel. We have your heart chakra, your throat chakra, your third eye right between your brow, and then the crown chakra, which is at the top of the head. And so each of these chakra systems were responsible for energy in a certain area of your body, in a certain area of your life. And so I want to start today talking a little bit about the root chakra, because this is our basic chakra, the most grounding, centering, balanced chakra that we should have. And so if you're out of balance and you're out of whack, then it really is going to affect all of your chakra system. And so that's why when Roxy asked about her intuition, what she was really asking about was her 6th chakra. That's our intuitive chakra. But I can't answer that question, and I can't tell her how to unblock that chakra without first doing the previous 5, because they kind of all build on one another. So coming from a psychological perspective, when we talk about our roots, our sense of being grounded, we're really talking about going back to like a Psych 101 kind of, bear with me for a minute, I'm putting my academic hat on. Abraham Maslow was a famous psychologist who came out, it's been decades ago, and he came up with what he called the hierarchy of needs. And that's kind of a modern day version of the chakra system. And so for him, his hierarchy of needs, the base, the root of that hierarchy, if you think of it like a pyramid, the base was this root chakra type of concept. Now, he didn't call it that. He called it our basic needs, our survival needs. So things like we need air to breathe, we need food to eat, we need water to drink, we need a roof over our head, right? So we need to have a sense of safety and security. And that's really what the root chakra actually is. And it's kind of funny, because when you look at the hierarchy of needs, according to Abraham Maslow, he even used the same colors that they used in the Upanishads to talk about the chakra system. And so since I'm kind of borrowing from both the spiritual world and the psychological world, since I have that PhD in psych, I wanted to try to bridge the gap for you and speak to you in a language that no matter where you're coming from, you can kind of understand it. So this root chakra is really our survival. So the idea is, if you don't feel like you are even surviving, you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you don't know if you're going to have a roof over your head tonight, you're having trouble breathing, you're really kind of like on high alert, nothing else matters, right? So you can't connect in with your intuition if you're too busy figuring out where your next meal is going to come from, right? You take it back to the root, back to survival. So when we talk about a block in the root chakra, what are we talking about? Usually what we're talking about from a psychological perspective is somewhere in childhood, early childhood, you had some survival issues, okay? It could be that your family was living in poverty and you literally didn't have a roof over your head for when you were a toddler. It could be that they didn't know where your next meal was going to from. So it could be something like that. But it's this idea, or you just didn't feel safe and secure in your environment. Maybe you grew up in an area where there was a lot of crime, where you heard your parents, your siblings talking about crime, where there was kind of always the looking over the shoulder going on. So any of these early childhood experiences in our formative years that made us feel unsafe and insecure may have caused a block in your root chakra, your basic needs, right? That still to this day, even if you are getting your basic needs met, you still might have some issues that you need to heal surrounding that time in your childhood where you didn't feel safe and you didn't feel secure. So I'm going to use myself as an example. So a couple of years ago, when I had just gotten a divorce, I was going through some pretty massive healing. And at that time, I decided that I needed to go through and heal my chakra system because it was something that I knew about. I knew I had these energy centers and I knew they were weak, and I hadn't really ever taken the time to really work on healing that. And, it's in my academic brain, I'm like, I don't need to worry about healing my root chakra because I have a roof over my head. I get all the food I need. I have everything I want. I feel safe. I feel secure. Yes, but, okay. So at that point in my life, it was fall of 2013. Within 1 week in August, I had gotten a divorce, given my house that I used to live in to my ex-husband in the divorce settlement, closed on a new house and moved in, and I had broken my heel. So this all happened in a week. And so when people talk about not feeling grounded and centered and balanced, that was me 2 years ago and in August of 2013, because it was like somebody had literally just taken the rug out from underneath my feet. And I was on crutches in a new house, new part of town where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the neighbors, my friends. I lost a lot of friends in the divorce because, you're married, you have a couple friends and they don't want to take sides. And so they just kind of vanished. And so I was really at a place in my life where I felt like, I got a roof over my head and I'm getting my needs met at a basic level, but I was very much stuck in survival mode because I'd never been on my own, right? I was almost 40 and I'd never really lived on my own, and here I was. So what did I do? So just to kind of give you an idea, what does that feel like? I'm not saying it has to be a major crisis that you've just gone through. So some of the symptoms of disconnect from your root chakra, feeling not centered, not grounded, not balanced, it might be depression, it might be cynicism, it might be just kind of a negative outlook on life, it might be very black and white thinking, right? Like it has to be this way or it has to be that way, because if it's that way and it's not this way, then you don't feel safe. Okay, so yes, it may be the more basic things, like you're not getting your basic needs met, but I was not that person, right? I was getting my basic needs met, and I still felt like the rug had been pulled out from under my feet because of what was going on in my life right now. And so if you feel like you are having some survival issues, and however this might show up, depression, despondency, for me it was an eating disorder. I had a really, really long 24-year battle that I was in denial about for most of that time with anorexia nervosa. And so, going back 2 years ago to that fall, I lost a ton of weight and I was completely immobile. Keep this in mind. I wasn't exercising because I'd broken my heel. I was in a cast, I was on crutches, and I was losing weight because voluntarily my coping mechanism was to not eat, because I tend to not eat when I'm stressed. And so that was fueling that eating disorder. So that can be a sign or a symptom of an imbalance in the root chakra. So how did I get to where I am today? I had to really start doing things that made me feel safe, secure, centered, grounded, and balanced. And I didn't even know what that was at that time. I was so lost, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, that I didn't know what that was. So I had to kind of dive deep within and ask myself, okay, what makes me feel safe? What makes me feel secure? That was the basic, right? Like I had to feel safe and I had to feel secure because I was already getting those other needs met, right? I was eating, I was well, not enough. I had a roof over my head, that kind of basic. I was, air to breathe, water to drink, all that kind of stuff. But it was the safety and security issue because I'd never been on my own. So I had to really start thinking about, okay, what's going to make me feel safe and what's going to make me feel secure? And to answer that question, I had to do some deep reflection. I had to go back to childhood and I had to really look at, where is this issue coming from? And what I found was that when I was a child, and it happened my entire childhood, but probably the first time I sort of remember it happening, my dad had wanderlust, and sometimes he would just up and leave us, and he'd be gone for a couple hours, he'd be gone for a couple days, we wouldn't know where he was, right? Like, it was just very much a feeling of not being centered and grounded. My mother tells the story when I was first learning how to walk. My dad was gone so much with his wanderlust that I would just run up to random men in the grocery store who sort of kind of looked like him and ask, "Are you my daddy?" Right? Like that story. So I don't consciously remember any of this, right? But that's what I'm talking about. Rooted in childhood is this deep fear of abandonment, this deep-seated insecurity. And I had to unearth that stuff, and I had to really start healing it. And so a couple of years ago, at the time of my divorce, when these feelings were kind of coming up again, that were circumstantial, but they felt so much more deep than just getting the divorce. They felt really, really rooted, because it's your roots that we're talking about here. I really had to dive deep and go, what was going on in my childhood that made me feel so insecure and unstable? And that was what it was, right? It was my fear of abandonment from my dad. And so I had to go and I had to really do some forgiveness work around that. I had to, and here I've said this before, I'll say it again, forgiveness is not atonement. Forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past could have been any different than it was. Clearly, I can't go back and change my life when I was a child, right? Like, that doesn't happen. But I could go and I could let it go. I could forgive my father. And so I started doing a lot of forgiveness work around the abandonment and around the fears and around that feeling of dissettled and discontent. And I kept doing that, right? So because it was my roots, I started with the earliest incident I could remember of a time that he left, and I kind of forgave him for that. And I went to the next incident of a time when he left, and I forgave him for that. And I went up through my adult years, and any time I could find a memory of myself feeling insecure, unstable, ungrounded, uncentered, imbalanced, I went through, I tried to figure out where it was coming from, and I let it go. Okay, and I wrote, when I say I let it go, the way that and I know I've shared this with you before, I'm going to share it again because I love this exercise. I wrote a letter, right? I wrote my dad a letter, and he's no longer living, so it's not like I could give it to him. But I wrote him a letter and really kind of getting it all out there of how insecure and how it made me feel and what ramifications it had for me as adult Mary. And when I was done writing all those letters to my father and a few other people along the way, I got rid of them. Right? I let them go. And so you can do that however you want. I like to burn them and then flush the remains down the toilet. Some people like to bury them. Some people like to rip them into shreds. Some people like to tie them to a balloon and let them go in the sky. If you live near an ocean, you can put it in a bottle and toss it out to sea, right? I don't care. But while you're doing it, it's a very symbolic release that you're doing. And it's a symbolic release of letting go of the hope that the past could have been any different. And in doing that, you're giving yourself permission to move forward with your life. And that is the goal. That's how you heal, right? I had to take my energy back and pull it back into my root chakra so that as, the first time in almost 40 years, a few years ago when I was going through all of this, that I was really on my own for the first time in my life. And I was kind of scared because my friends and my family were like, you can't do this. You can't be on your own. You've never done it before and you're 40. And I was like, watch me, right? I mean, I got kind of a little snotty about it, but I did it. And I couldn't have done it had I not taken the time to heal. So that, Roxy, that's the root chakra. We've got 5 more to go until we actually get to your question. But like I said, it starts with the roots. If you don't feel centered and grounded and balanced, you cannot heal the other areas of your life, including the intuition, right? The relationship with your inner goddess. So if you're struggling with feelings of being imbalanced or insecure or ungrounded, I encourage you to really go and do a deep dive and do some healing work and let it go so that you can give yourself permission to move forward with your life. I hope this served you. This is Dr. Mary. I'll see you next time.